Hello, my name is Michelle, and you're listening to Profit is a Choice. Joining me on the podcast today is Diane Preston. Diane loves working with her hands, and she started creating window treatments professionally over 27 years ago. This year is the 25th anniversary of Diane's Interior Creations in Murfreesboro, Tennessee. Diane's business is Full Service Workroom, and her goal is to provide excellence and elegance to designers and to their clients. She is a member of the WCAA and the Professional Drapery Workroom of Middle Tennessee. She's been published in multiple magazines, local and national. She's won awards and has created window treatments and soft furnishings in multiple states as well as in England. Diane was so very gracious today to share her journey with us. And all of it was for the sole reason of opening the conversation a little wider on what is actually possible in a small drapery workroom with regard to gross profit, salary, and net profit. That's a conversation that Diane, is going to mention that she wishes she had known about earlier, or that a conversation that was being had that she could have learned from. And so I really just want you to listen in and to know that not only is her story inspirational, it can be duplicated. So listen and just, glean a little bit of how she created the business of her dreams, and know that you can do the same. Every day, empowered entrepreneurs are taking ownership of their company financial health and enjoying the rewards of reduced stress and more creativity. With my background as a financial software developer, owner of multiple businesses in the interior design industry, educator, and speaker, I coach women in the interior design industry to increase their profits, regain ownership of their bottom line, and to have fun again in their business. Welcome to Profit is a Choice. Hey, Diane, I'm so glad you're with us today.
Hey, Michelle. Thank you so much for having me. It's quite an honor. I really appreciate it.
You are so welcome. So, Diane, I've told our audience a little bit about you, about your business in Murfreesboro. You are a drapery workroom. You do exquisite work. And we met each other for multiple years at conferences and different things. But I'm going to let you, before we jump into all of your story, tell us a little bit about what your business looks like today.
All right. Well, I'm in Murfreesboro, Tennessee, which is about 30 miles southeast of Nashville. And this year I am celebrating my 25th year in business. And it's actually November. So that's when we're recording this. I've been making window treatments for almost 28 years professionally. I worked for a designer who needed a seamstress, but 25 years ago, opened Diane's Interior Creations. I'm committed to providing my designers and clients with excellence and elegance. That is super important to me. The favorite part of my job is witnessing the transformation of bolts of fabric, trim, hardware, all the pieces and parts into beautiful creations that delight the designers and homeowners. It's so exciting for me to bring the designer's vision to life. That's just like the highlight of my day when the designer goes, nailed it.
Isn't that always the best? So let me ask you this. What happened that prompted you to change from, you said you've been sewing for designers for 28 years, but started in business at 25. What was it that made you realize you needed to start it as a business?
One phone call. There was a workroom in my area that I don't even know how she got my number, but she called and said, my husband's being relocated to Alaska. I need to liquidate my business now. And I was like, well, okay, I'll just go over and look at maybe a machine or two. And I didn't think that much about it. And when I went over there, she had a full-blown workroom. She had clients. And I just thought, oh my goodness, I can't do this. I can't do this. And then she told me the price and I was like, oh, really? So let me talk to my husband. And so when I called him, he said, great, go for it. And I was like, no, really, where's Steve? Because I was not prepared for that. And the next week, Diane's Interior Creations was born.
Wow, that's amazing. And so when you started that business 25 years ago, do you have the same business name that you had then?
The only thing that is different is I'm incorporated.
Okay, so you're an S corp, correct,
and
or
C
C
Corp.
C
Yep.
corp? Okay.
Yes.
Wow. So you went all the way from a sole proprietor all the way up. Did you start as a C corp?
When I switched over, yes, that was the advice of my accountant at the time. I have since found out I could have done it a different way, but and this is something for your listeners to think about as you get to be our age and approaching retirement. Your husband's 401k and real estate, and if you've gotten out of debt, you've got some assets to be protected. And so at that point, that was the advice of the accountant at that time. If I could have done it different, I probably would have done maybe the LLC with a large umbrella policy, but I'm already well into it. And
Right. You're there now.
yeah,
Yeah.
oh, there's some perks with it.
Right.
So,
Absolutely. And
yeah.
I'll say this, certainly I think everybody needs to talk to their accountant or their lawyer or their advisors. So this is just educational information, but I do recommend that most of the people that I work with not be sole proprietors, simply because of some protections for assets that your husband, anything your name is on, protecting those assets. And you have a little more protection as you move up into LLCs, S Corps, and C Corps than you do as a sole proprietor. And that doesn't mean that sometimes that can also bite you. So you really have to talk with your accountant and your bookkeeper. I personally started off as a sole proprietor, and then probably about 2 or 3 years in realized, okay, this is not, I've got my 401k, my husband's 401k, I've got a lot of things on the line here. So I moved to an LLC. And then as my income kept growing over the years, I moved to an S Corp. So I'm an LLC that files as an S Corp. And then that allows me other protections, as I go through all of that. And so anyway, I think that, is just a great aside for us to tell people, make sure you go check that. The last thing I wanted was for something to happen and my husband's 401k to be on the line for something in my company, whether it was advice, whether it was shade cord safety, it didn't matter, a pole falling off the wall, bad design, somebody trips and falls and sues the design. I mean, just crazy stuff. So anyway, talk to your accountant, your lawyer, and make sure that you're covered properly. So
and do your homework.
Yes, do your homework. Right. And every state's a little bit different in what's covered and not covered. And so that's why I don't think there's a sweeping answer across all 50 states. But
definitely,
I will say in most cases, sole proprietors where you're going to have the largest amount of personal risk.
Right.
And we just have to look at that. Yep. So how did you define profitability when you first started?
I thought if I just met certain goals within our family budget. We were in the process of getting out of debt when I developed the business. And so I had borrowed money out of our savings to pay for the business. So it was very important for me to pay that back ASAP. And then it started being that I would just be responsible for certain things in the budget. And as long as I met that budget amount, I felt like I was good. I didn't even think about more than that, just meeting the basics. I had 3 kids that were growing up. I was busy with them. I didn't take the business side of my business very seriously till 2014.
Wow. And so at 2000, when did you start then? So how many years in business? That would have been 4 years ago. So that means that you would have been in business 21 years without really digging into maybe some of the business aspects at the level that, and let's be fair here. Many of us open businesses similar to yours, to what mine was, that we do so that we can also manage a family at the same time. It doesn't mean everybody does that, but it certainly is one of the perks of having a home-based business, or even a part-time business, or a 3/4 time business, or even a full-time business with extremely flexible hours that we can work around the schedules of our children. And when that happens, there is always a balancing act between what does the family need, like you said, meeting those budget requirements, but also doing what I need to do in the company. I know even the first few years in my business, my big goal was to pay for vacations and to pay for kind of the fun stuff, like maybe soccer cleats or all the extra stuff they needed to play all the sports or to try all the things that they wanted to try. It might be a couple of extra trips to the movies or just things like that with the kids. And then I realized I'm not even putting money in retirement. And so then I had to stop and, make sure that not only am I doing things for fun for today, but let's put a little bit of money in retirement. And when I say little, I'm talking I was putting $5,000-$6,000, which to some people is a lot. But in the grand scheme of what we are allowed to put in, I mean, at this taping, I'm over 50, and we're allowed to put $24,500 in as an individual. And I was putting in $4,000 or $5,000, $6,000, which was better than nothing. But it certainly was a small amount compared to what I could have put in legally at the time. At the time, I couldn't have put all that in. I wasn't 50, but you know what I'm saying? There was I still had room to grow in that particular area. And so that's kind of the beauty of having the business that we have, is we have that flexibility. Yes. And you found the same.
Oh, yes. Yeah. Because as the kids grew, my business grew. So it allowed me to do all the fun stuff that I wanted to do with them as a mom, be involved in school and sports and all of that with them and enjoy that. And then it did mean that I worked a lot at night. But after they went to bed, and then as they got more independent, the business just grew and grew. And as soon as they started going off to college, it ramped up another error or another mark.
Exactly.
And then in 2014, things really started changing.
So let me ask this. We'll talk about that pivotal moment in 14. But how do you define profit today? If you defined it back when you started as meeting a couple of budgeted bills, how would you say you define it today?
For me, profit is twofold: monetary and time.
Okay.
So because I cannot get my time back. So I have, using Profit First, I have set up all my accounts, and now they are fully funded. So that feels really, really good. And then I know my numbers. My numbers really have to do a lot with how I feel my business is succeeding and sustainable. So I know that 5% of everything goes into my profit. 60% is my owner's pay. My operating expenses are 22%. So I run lean and mean without being cheap.
I love it.
One thing about being a C Corp is Diane's Interior Creations rents from the Prestons. So that's another stream of revenue for me personally, is the rent. So I don't know what all the other entities allow you to do, like the LLCs or whatever. And I'm not endorsing one over the other. Just that's what has worked out for us.
Okay, so you're making me really happy with a couple of things. The fact that that time is a currency, and the fact that you're looking towards sustainability, and that you use Profit First, and that your percentages and your numbers. You've made my heart sing. We can stop the podcast right now because I'm completely satisfied and happy. I'm just holding on for the day that everybody in the industry knows all those numbers, because we will be a force to be reckoned with. I can promise you. So, Diane, let's go back, and I would love to hear, in your words, I want you to tell me what happened in 2014 that made you stop and look at the business differently.
I took Pricing Without Emotions from this fabulous entrepreneur, woman, speaker, Michelle.
I remember that course. I remember that.
You changed my business and my life.
Wow.
And I really appreciate it. Just to know that, understanding my numbers, they were all kind of like out there. I knew they were important, but I didn't get it. And I remember sitting in that chair, listening to you and looking at that folder going, oh, wow. It just clicked. Things started clicking as we were going on. And I just thought, I have left so much money on the table. And that's kind of a sickening feeling.
Yeah.
But then it was an empowering feeling to learn that my skills and my knowledge were valuable. I knew how to sew, and not everybody knows how to sew, blah, blah, blah. But that course was so empowering that I really had something that was valuable in the marketplace to offer. And that my time, I had not really considered the time aspect. When in a workroom, your product is what you get out that is valuable. That's what I had always thought. But it's also my time of knowing how to do this, going to the conferences, learning from podcasts, learning more, all of that stuff is valuable. And to be able to charge what I need to charge and it be okay. And it just gave me energy in my business. When I got back home, it kind of just, what's the words I'm trying to think of? I felt like I had 2 days of a fire hose, with all the information. And so I kind of had to decompress for a little bit and just start to learn. Like I started poring over business books and poring over numbers and learning more about really how to run a business, not just a workroom.
Oh, I love that so much, because running a workroom is about the production schedule. It's about selling and getting it out. That's what running a workroom is, which is why we can hire a workroom production person. That's very different than entrepreneurship and business ownership. And I remember we were at Judy's and we were upstairs of her workroom. And I remember you coming in, you drove all the way like it's forever, but a few hours, 4 hours, 3.5
4 hours. Yeah.
But you drove from Tennessee to Georgia. And I remember you in the class. But what I remember about you, which is interesting, you came with your profit and loss statement. So you had your statements, you brought them. And I remember looking at them and going, Diane, you're doing well. You're not doing, but I don't think you, like you said, you didn't really know how to maybe interpret all those numbers.
Had no idea.
You had some numbers. And my point in that class is funny. Sometimes people take that class and they walk away and they think, I thought she was going to tell me to increase my prices. I rarely, as a blanket statement, make the comment, increase your prices, because I don't think that's a fair statement to make if you don't really know the quality and the value that somebody is putting out into the world. So to just say raise your prices without really doing the work is actually, to me, unfair to the consumer and somewhat business malpractice. And so that is not going to ever be what I just, unless somebody told me I'm charging $10 an hour for design time or something, then I'd be like, girl, come on. But otherwise, I don't normally blanket statement that. And I'm kind of wary of people who just automatically say double your cost or raise your rates without really knowing. And in the Pricing Without Emotion class, that's never what I do. What I do is show you how the math works with time and value, and then ask you if you are pricing your time, your value, your knowledge, and your expertise appropriately. And then the other part of that class and of all of my coaching and even the podcast is just to say, the goal is not to work more to make more. The goal is to be paid for what you're already doing. And I would say 7 out of 10 people that come to my courses realize, number one, that they may think it costs a lot to take a course like that, but they are losing more than that in a month every single time. And so if they were to just come and learn how to do it better, they would literally make the money back. I have some people that make the money back on some of my courses within a week because they realize all the money that was left on the table. And that's where you kind of get that sick feeling that I think you mentioned, and that, oh my gosh, what am I going to do? Which is the same sick feeling I got back in 2003, April of 2003, when I did our taxes and went, what am I doing? It's that same feeling that prompted me to turn everything around, and then eventually, of course, write a curriculum, teach it, and then move into podcasting, profit first, and everything else. It was all from what I did wrong.
Right, because I saw also how much time I was wasting during the day, just not taking business seriously. And so that course helped me realize the pricing part of it, but also being efficient and productive with my time. that also played a big part into it. And time is money. So some of the things I didn't necessarily go up in price, but I felt like I did get a raise because I was using my time better and I was working smarter, not harder.
Right. I have Ann Johnson, who is in episode 17, and we talk there about her efficiency class and all of that. And it is really something that ties in, is knowing how to price it and being efficient. And I can remember sometimes thinking I felt like I was working all the time, but when I really sat back and kept up with how I spent my day, I allowed myself to be distracted a lot. And when I learned to kind of block those distractions and focus differently, I could get my work done a whole lot faster. And then move on to enjoy the other parts of my life that I enjoyed. Did you find some of the same?
Oh, yes. And a couple of years ago, I ran across a book by David Allen called Getting Things Done, The Art of Stress-Free Productivity.
Yeah, I'll put that one in our show notes. That's a great book.
Yes. So he really, really helped me about staying focused. I'm a really big one of seeing squirrels and chasing squirrels, throughout the day. So that has helped me fine tune my focus every day with the list that I make or the brain dump, because my brain sometimes goes a million miles an hour and my hands can only go so fast.
That's right.
So
one of my favorite parts of there are a couple things that he says in that book that I love. One is about the brain dump. Just get it out of your brain so you can think.
Yes.
And then the other is the goal is to only touch things once. So don't pick them up and move them from pile to pile, place to place. Sit down and create space. When you pick it up, deal with it and be done. And I think that is huge for us because it's easy to shift papers and shift ideas and thoughts all over the place. And then you almost have to come back around to them 4 or 5 times. And his idea is when it comes in, deal with it and throw it away. So I'll give you a prime example. When I go out to get the mail and I come in, I look through the mail. If it is completely junk mail, I tear it up, throw it away at that moment. My husband never sees it. If it is all that matters, I leave it and then I separate it by, whoever it belongs to. I go ahead and bring mine into the office and deal with it. My husband goes to get the mail. He will come in, and even if I'm out of town for 3 or 4 days, when I come home, every bit of junk mail, everything is still piled up, and I have to go through it a second time. And I'm thinking, we don't buy from that. That's crap email or crap mail. Why don't you throw it away? He said, well, I don't want to miss anything that you might want to look at. And I'm like,
that is so funny.
I shelter you from all the junk,
I know.
You're just finishing a political, election cycle. And if I had saved all that for him to look at, we could wallpaper a wall. So I just, regardless, I'm pitching it. I don't need to sit and look at it. It just makes me laugh. I'm like, clearly he needs to read that book because he would throw the mail away and I wouldn't.
Oh, yeah. That is so funny because the same thing happens here. So
I know it. So 28 years ago, if you had known what you know now, what do you think your business would look like today?
Oh my goodness.
I know.
I would have never in a million years dreamed that I would be right here. Never in my wildest dreams. God is so, so good. Wow. There's no telling, Michelle.
There's no time. Okay, that's not meant to be a discouragement, right? At all.
No.
But what it is to show the difference between where you are now and where you were then, and how your thinking has changed, how your attention to your business has changed. You mentioned profit first. When did you put profit first into play? So in 2014, you took the Pricing Without Emotion course and went back. I remember you even emailed me 2 days later and were like, oh, I'm overwhelmed. I remember that email. Okay.
Yes, I was so overwhelmed. And also looking at just how to run the workroom more efficiently. I had an employee at the time and I needed to make some big changes. I had let so much go by the wayside and just let things slide because we started out being really good friends and I hired her and we did great. She worked here for 5 years. But once I saw what my business could be and should be, I needed to make some really big changes within the workroom and that didn't go over that well. So it was a few months later, I needed to separate what was best for my business from personal.
Yeah.
And that was really hard. But once that happened and we got through that little spell, the joy came in my business tenfold because I was able to stay focused. I was able to be more productive. I was able to get the business where it needed to be. And just this year, our oldest daughter, has been able to come on more full time. Well, she doesn't work full time, but more of a full part-time position because she has 2 little kids. She is really wanting to learn the business. When I show her the skill, then I'm able to have her repeat it back to me. She does the skill, and then I have her write the procedure. So we're finally getting the procedure manual going, and I'm seeing she's got it. The way her brain works, when she is doing it in this order, she's got the skill. And we're going like gangbusters. It's phenomenal. So we're both very excited. She is just loving it, and I'm loving having. We think a lot alike, so she knows when we're in here, we're doing business. You know, the family stuff and everything, you know, will happen a little later, but we're serious when we're in the workroom.
Okay, so a few things that I love about all of that you said that I just kind of want to pull out for those that are listening. The first is after the course, you went back. So after any time we look at our financials, whether it's with the course with me or any other way, you went back and took the time to truly analyze what was happening in the business. So you didn't just listen to it in a class, take a few things away. You went back and poured in. What you also realized was that to get the business that you want, you were going to have to make some changes and some very hard decisions. And I'll tell you, that is one of the hardest things when I have to tell my coaching clients, either you've got to leave your space. If you want to survive, we have to leave the space. We have to let go of an employee. Here's what happens. And we have to do it all the time because quite often we are hiring and buying and biting off more than the business can actually handle. And we don't have the work to be able to keep up with it. And so there's a fine line between holding on and building and taking a step back. There was another podcast that I just did. Let me look up real quick. Rochelle, which was episode 8, talking about how taking a step back is actually sometimes, a better way to get you forward than just plowing through, right? And so for you, there was like a pivot, like that step back. Let me change some things, then I can move forward again.
Right, because part of me felt like a failure that I didn't have an employee anymore. But within just 2 or 3 weeks, wow, I felt like I had really stepped forward because I was able to focus and things started just clicking and clicking and clicking. It was really neat.
Yeah. And so sometimes just I'm going to say in air quotes here, the world makes us think that business is successful if you make a lot of money and have a lot of employees. And sometimes that's what costs you more. And I'm not saying not to have money and not to have employees, but everything has to be analyzed and thought about. So when did you, in that process, Diane, when did you bring on Profit First? Because you did some of those really tough things in 14, and I know I had not kicked off. I didn't find Profit First until, even though I taught some of the same things in that class, we talked about separating our money out.
Right.
So I had been teaching kind of what I would almost call a Profit First light type of system. I found the company Profit First in 2015. When did you implement or start reading up on that? Was it
about a year ago?
Okay.
It was just about a year ago. Profit First fits to me very well with the Dave Ramsey philosophy, which we went all through that. And so I was using some of the Dave Ramsey principles within my business. I feel like Profit First ramped it up another step.
Right. And that's kind of what I always tell people is Profit First is almost like the Dave Ramsey version for the business. And my husband and I, we do the Dave Ramsey version in our home. We do Profit First in the business. And I'm just telling you, there's nothing that's better than being debt free. It just is not.
Exactly.
Because now we have the freedom to try different things.
Exactly. And when I was reading the book, I got really scared thinking, oh no, what if I haven't done enough? Because
Okay.
before reading the book, I was looking at my account thinking, okay, I'm doing well. And I was. The numbers were showing that I was doing well. But when I looked at it just a little bit differently, using the profit first method, I thought, oh dear, what if I'm not as good as I thought? And Michelle, let me tell you, when I started running the numbers, he has the guide in there of what percentages you should have. I did that Snoopy happy dance because I was well within, like the expenses were low, my taxes were right where I needed to be. My profit for the year that I did it was 30%.
Wow. On top of salary.
On top of salary. It was, last year was just an amazing year. So when I did all of that, and it didn't even dawn on me, I guess, for those percentages, because I had allowed my profit in the business, because I was ramping up some of the accounts, filling those in, but I didn't realize how important that was, because once I started with profit first, those accounts were full. I was off to the races. So I had already done, I guess, a lot of the homework without realizing I did.
That's right. That's right. It's funny. I'll have, I look through profit and loss statements all the time, and it's interesting. I'll have some that I can almost glance down at and go, yeah, you're pretty much within percentages. And then we'll do profit first on it. We'll look at everything and they'll be within a little here and there, and they feel great. They can't believe it, but it's almost like they are intuitively running the business. And I'll tell you who it is that's doing it. It's the ones that usually are not trying to have the business show up flashier than it needs to be. And I don't mean that in a bad way. But it's so easy in our industry of the umbrella of interior design to have our businesses show up flashy. And when we prefer flashy over profits, it can get in the way. Flashy where, and I'm just going to throw out a couple of ideas. Maybe we buy Starbucks for everybody in the company every day. Well, honestly, that really shouldn't be a business write-off, but maybe we take it as one. And if we take it as one, then, just imagine what that cost can be, based on maybe we're just doing little things all the time, not saying on occasion, but we have some consistent habits of splurging and spending and doing things that are not directly impacting the bottom line or impacting the bottom line, but in a very negative way. Whereas if I were to say to them, what if you could give, let's say, I'm going to grab my calculator. I'm going to show you something. So let's say we spent $3 a day on our staff, buying them a Starbucks or a green smoothie or fill in the blank for anything that we bought them. And we did that times 5 days times, let's see, so we do $3 a day. And let's say we do that for 48 weeks and we do it 5 times a day. That's $720. What if I just gave them a bonus? Exactly. Would they really want a $750 bonus, or would they prefer to have a daily Starbucks? And so when they start looking at it that way, it's almost like the light bulb goes, oh, wow, that it goes off and it shines really bright. I'm spending money over here on something that maybe has a very minimal value, but if I added it up, it could have a really big value later.
Right. And another thing that I realized was when I was looking through my expenses, and I periodically, I go through the expenses and make sure those little hidden fees just accumulate. It goes, there's one thing that I might have used a whole lot, and it's just a recurring thing that comes on my credit card every month. But things change. I do things differently, and just kind of I'm not utilizing that service as well as I should or could if I really wanted to. And then the price of that goes up. And if I'm not paying attention, it's 3, 4, 5 months that I'm paying for something that I'm not using. And it's just throwing money out the window. So
that's exactly right.
Yeah, that's one of the big lessons that I've learned is keeping an eye on those little expenses that add up at the end of the year.
So two things I do. One is I do an expense review, a major expense review every 6 months. So
Mhm.
I do one at the end of the year and I do one around June, July, mid-year. But what I also do is my credit card statement is pretty low. And so on purpose, I don't have it do an automatic sync. I'm not suggesting this for the designers that have 5,000 things on it. But I don't do an automatic sync because it forces me to enter every one of them individually and to make a decision. And so
Right.
even if you just once in a while had to go through and do that, then that's where I start to see the little $9 here and $10 there
Exactly.
for something, a service that maybe I used that required you to sign up and you have to remember to unsign up. And
Right.
I've caught myself on a couple of things going, it's not, why am I doing that? And I could be, $40, $50, $100 down the line before I catch it. But when I
Yes.
enter it directly, it hits me. And so sometimes it's
Mhm.
about taking the time to stop and look at those. So I would recommend, quarterly or at least twice a year, we call it like an expense scrub. Go through and ask yourself, is every expense necessary for what I want to do, where I want to go? And is that where I want to spend my money? Or would I rather spend it on salaries, bonuses, or profit? Because
Right.
every dollar that we spend in expenses is a dollar that's not going to bonus or profit or whatever.
Exactly. Yes. Yes. Because when I was seeing, I had a goal a few years ago of what my salary would be. And then the Lord blessed and bigger jobs started coming. And I have a very comfortable over 6-figure salary now, which 25 years ago, never would have dreamed that would have been. And so I sometimes I kick myself of why didn't I learn this 20 years ago? But it is what it is. And it wasn't time then. It's time now.
Right.
And time to teach my daughter who is wanting to learn the business, learn how to do it efficiently, learn how to do it effectively, and use things that I've learned over the last 25 years or 28 years. She doesn't have to make all the mistakes that I did.
Right. She'll make her own. She just doesn't need to make those if she can help it.
Right. Yeah. She'll have her own set. She doesn't need to have my set too.
That's right. Which is the whole reason that I do what I do as well. Something that I find, I guess, interesting, I want to dig into for a minute. I know, especially I see it on both sides, but on the workroom side of the interior design industry, I even remember when I came into it, trying to find out how much you could make. And nobody would tell me. And at first, I think I've shared this before, I thought, why are people so closed? Why will they tell me how to make everything, but nobody will tell me how much I can make? Right? They'll tell me how
Right.
to fabricate. They'll tell me how to cut. They'll tell me how to sew. But nobody can tell me. And I realized it's because they didn't know. It wasn't because
Right.
they didn't want me to know what they were making. That could have been a bit of it. But I think it's also because they didn't even know what was possible. And you made that comment just a minute ago. I didn't even know what was possible. I just did the smallest amount in front of me. And I know one of the things that I encourage is, let's say we start off as a part-time business, whether it's interior design, drapery workroom, any other creative venture. We start off part-time so that we can be mom, wife, whatever,
Right.
and business owner. My goal is to teach you how to be profitable in the part-time, right?
Mm-hmm.
Then if you
Right.
decide I want to be full-time, the goal is to be profitable in the full-time. And then if
Right.
you go back to part-time as a grandparent or as a, partial retiree, the goal is to be profitable in the part-time. There's nothing that says that profitability only shows up when we work full-time, because
Right.
we should be profitable no matter the size of the company. That's about scalability. And nobody could ever
Mhm.
explain what that looked like. And so I've had to kind of figure it out and develop it, which is, of course, why I help with that now. I think in your way, I would love to see or hear your view on this. See, I think what's so great is you're going to be able to go to your daughter and say, look, when I started, I thought I could just make enough to cover a couple of incidentals in the budget. But I want you to look at what I'm making and what I'm doing and how I'm doing. I want you to realize the potential, because I think if we recognize the potential, and Janelle and her team, you know, they have put together a great resource they did earlier in 2018 with salaries and profits, just
Right.
trying to
Yeah.
start gathering information at the Curtains and Soft Furnishings Library.
Mhm.
But I think sometimes we don't know where the ceiling is. And so we think the ceiling's a lot lower than it is.
Oh, I did. 100% did. I thought that where I am now was only for, maybe workrooms in New York, or, I'm in Murfreesboro, Tennessee. Nashville, granted, is booming right now. There's so much opportunity in Nashville. But by working efficiently and productively, I am always looking for ways to make an excellent product more efficiently without compromising quality 1 ounce. That is super important to me. And I have found over the years ways to just be more proficient and more effective in the time I'm in the workroom. Time studies, I know, is just this, oh, who wants to do time studies? Time studies is my friend now, because if I'm wearing a stopwatch, and it makes me stay focused, and it gives me such an energy boost to know that, oh, that usually takes me X amount of time, but I shaved off 30 seconds. To me, that's more money in my pocket. And not that everything I do is for money. My goal is to create gorgeous treatments that a homeowner makes, that their home feels more like a haven for them. And so when I'm able to be here in the workroom and in the zone, being able to create all of this effectively and proficiently, it's just so much fun.
So Diane, given that you have had multiple years of a 6-figure salary, and we're not saying any of this to brag, but we're celebrating
No.
We want people to know that it's possible. And I think if we don't say that it's possible, then we always think that it's not. All right. So just to lay a few things out there. So 6-figure salary, you have, your profit account funded way above the 5%. I think you said 30. Did you say?
Last year it was 30. So now
30%. It'll come down a little bit now that you've got somebody working with you more. But still,
right.
You have a fully funded profit account, fully funded tax account, which is somewhere probably between 15 and 18%. You're running lean and mean without reducing quality at 22%. And so you're doing all those things right. What do you think now about where the ceiling is for what you can make? Now, we always know there's a trade-off, and I am not telling anybody that they've got to always go fight to make 6 figures or do those things if they don't have the time to put into it, because you are working full-time.
Yes, I work long hours.
Hours. But they make you money, and you've still got the family balance that you want.
Right, because I still have time with my grandchildren. I'm very active in our community, where I'm in a couple of bunkos. I'm in a book club. We travel. So I work hard and play hard.
Exactly. So where do you think the ceiling is now?
I would like to have my income stay the same.
Okay.
Or just a little bit more, while scaling back some of the hours.
Okay.
Instead of having to work almost every Saturday, to be off practically every Saturday.
Okay.
Or time is a bigger commodity that I'm feeling like I don't have as much slush in right now.
Okay.
So, and I'm also loving that I'm able to bless my family we go on a really big trip every other year. The entire extended, the in-laws, the grandkids, things keep growing, which is fabulous. So I'm wanting to keep that up and just go forward.
It's great. But what I think is so interesting is now you see possibility that when you first started, you didn't even see the possibility of a 6-figure income plus profit, plus taxes, plus retirement. You didn't even see it. Now you have not only seen it, you have attained it. And so now you see that there's another possibility, working a little bit less, making the same or more, streamlining
Yes.
even more, bringing your daughter into the business. That is amazing. You also mentioned to me before recording, I want to put this out there, your son is also in the industry as an installer.
Yes, yes, he is. And he follows a lot of the profit first principles. He took over for a veteran installer 3 years ago who was retiring from his installation business. He's practically watched my son grow up because we started working, that installer and I started working together about 18, 20 years ago.
Right.
So it was a fabulous, Zach was doing something that he didn't really love. And the installer was like, look, he needs to work here. He can do this. And he trained him. And now he has a very flourishing, profitable business in the Middle Tennessee area and works for lots of designers in workrooms.
That's fantastic, because I know that in our industry, finding good installers is very, very difficult. I mean, they are on the search boards within the interior design, drapery workroom, and installer all the time in that area, begging, who do you know that can install different places around the country? So he's in a very, very good business. How does it feel to you to have a son and a daughter both in this industry and the umbrella of interior design, and then primarily?
Super blessed. Yes, super blessed. I never, when they were growing up, wanted to push them into the industry, because I want them to do what they love. Doing a profession, working in a profession that you love is so rewarding instead of just doing a job. So at first they went other paths, which was fine, no big deal. It has been so exciting in the last now 3 years to have them come and want to be in the industry. On job sites, when I'm with my son, he calls me Diane. We keep, the mom-son relationship, which can get kind of tricky in situations, as separate as we can on job sites. And it's so funny when a client will say, there's something more to you two. You two talk to each other in a different way. Are you related? So it's kind of funny, but it's just, when your kids are grown, sometimes it's hard to relate to them, but we talk business a lot and have a lot of fun.
Yeah, I'll have to tell you this story. It's so funny to me. So, I needed an installer for a job, and my regular installer was booked. My husband was my installer when I first started, and we did all of our installs primarily at night and weekends so that I could get childcare. And after his full-time job in IT, he would come home and I would, put him in his belt and here we go off and do our install. Yep. And so we went to one of my clients' homes. It was retail, and we didn't act like husband and wife. It was Joel and Michelle, and we just talked to each other. And I never said to her, this is my husband. I said, this is my installer, Joel.
Right.
We're here to do the job. And so we did the job, and then we left. And I want to say it was maybe about a week or so later. She doesn't live too far from us. We are out at dinner, and we're all canoodling, and chatting, and just looking at each other, holding hands across the table. And she walked by, her eyes got so big, almost like, what is she doing? And so when I saw her, I said, hey, come over here. I want to introduce you to my husband. And she was like, okay, because you had me concerned for a minute. So I just thought it was so funny. So I learned a big lesson, at least with my husband, because, rumors can get
yes.
So then I would say, this is my husband, Joel. He's also my installer. And then I ended up, moving to all daytime install. So he didn't have to do that anymore. But it was so funny to watch her face. And it was kind of like, okay, there's definitely more to this than I thought when you were installing the drapes in my home. There you go.
That is funny.
When you've been in business, 20 years or whatever, you definitely have stories to tell, no doubt.
Oh, yeah. We could write a book on those.
No doubt. So let me ask you this, Diane. When you learned, and so I'm going to just jump into something that can be a little tricky, and our listeners here span, designers, workrooms, stagers, all areas of the interior design industry. But when one part of a chain recognizes that they've been undervaluing their product and services, and they need to increase the price to reflect the value, it causes a ripple effect in that chain. Okay?
Yes.
All right. So when you started back in 2014, realizing that you had been undervaluing, leaving money on the table, and that there were a lot of things that you maybe were not doing that were fair and reasonable to be done, did you get pushback?
Yes.
Okay.
At first I did. But then there was a process of educating the designer and or client for this is showing how my work is set apart from maybe an incoming workroom, that my designers expect couture, handmade pieces and draperies, anything that we put out is couture, high level. So once I started educating the designers and showing them all of the details that go into this product, when you're looking at something on the wall, you see the whole, but when you pull it back and show the hand-stitched hems, the high quality linings and inner linings, and the proficient ways of putting things together with excellence.
Right.
Light bulb moments started coming on with them, and I started seeing them in the client's home, showing them the details, showing them how this motif is meticulously centered or incorporated in that treatment to show off this piece of artwork or this. So as a whole, how this is part of the big picture.
Let me start over here. What I think is so important about that is we have to come, whether we're a designer, workroom installer, whoever we are, whatever role we play, we have to be so in tune with the value that we're bringing that then we can price it. That is why I do not give blanket statements to go increase your rates. Because once you realize that value, you can't not increase your rate if it's needed to be increased, or reduce your rate if the rate you have been putting out there is higher than the value that you bring. And what I think is so interesting is when one person in the chain, one company in the chain kind of realizes it, it forces everybody else, if they're a smart business person, to stop and take a look. And I know as workroom, I have been in situations where I needed to charge a certain amount for what I was doing, and I got pushback from the designer. And when I explained to the designer, what we sometimes realized was that the designer was selling to the wrong homeowner a couture product.
Right.
And so once the designer understood their own value, plus the value of the workroom, plus the value of the installer, then they could make sure that their ideal client matched the subcontractors they were using. Do you know what I mean?
That's what has happened. That is exactly what has happened with us.
So I just helped one of my design clients look at a time study. So, we don't really like them, but her business model is set up on time billing. And she uses a program, and it's down to the, 0.15, 0.25. So I think there were like 6 designers that touched this project within 1 month. And by the time we'd calculated everything out, it was almost $29,000 of time billing in 1 month. But if we had said, hey, I think I'm going to go bill $29,000 this month in time billing, we would shrink back. But every single thing it was an enormous home, and it was a whole house install. So it was huge. But the work that it took for every single person to show up all the time was shocking. And the hours, it was hundreds of hours when you added up 4 hours here, 3 hours here, 20 hours there. But if we had not kept up with all of her timing, she probably would not have valued the service
Right.
at that rate. And so when anybody can show the time and the value and point it out, it's difficult to argue. And so I say that because you didn't just raise your rates and say, sorry, I hate it for the rest of you. You raised your rates with analysis and with forethought, and then you educated the designers and the homeowners on why. And then you made sure that you aligned with the designers and the homeowners who valued what you brought to the table. And that is the same thing that the designers have to do. And the installers, here's the value I bring, here's what I do, here's the associated cost. And now we want to make sure we align with a homeowner who values what the designer brings, who values what the subcontractor brings.
Exactly. And becoming that designer's best resource.
Yes.
I strive to, it's one-stop shop for them. One of my goals is to make their job easier so they can be more creative. They can go and get more jobs. If I'm taking some of the things off of their plate of doing some research, I am getting compensated for that. But yet it is empowering them to go for more. So I really try to be their number one go-to in the window treatment, soft furnishing, bedding industry. And they trust me. They trust that I'm going to do what I say when I say it with excellence.
And that makes you extremely valuable, and it makes them more valuable to their client as well. Let me ask you this. If somebody is stuck and afraid, say they're either afraid to look at their numbers, they are afraid to analyze their numbers, they're afraid to let somebody go, they're afraid to make a change in their business. From your experience, what would you share with them?
The first thing I would say is take your pricing with emotion class, hands down. That is a huge game changer. So what they need to do next is sign up for that class. Also take your online Understanding Your Financials. That is a great way. It kind of fine-tuned when I took it, my understanding, just because I wanted to be sure I was sure.
Right.
We all need refresher courses.
It's kind of like, what am I really looking at? And, I'll put links to that in the show notes, but that course is online, like you said, self-paced, but it really is, what am I looking at with a profit and loss statement? What am I looking at with a balance sheet? What should I be looking at? How do I create a budget? How do I manage that budget? How do I follow it through and look at it in my taxes? What are the numbers really telling me? It actually tells you how to analyze, which is not as deep as we were able to go in the pricing without emotion. And so it kind of, to me, I almost see it as pricing without emotion, understanding your financials, profit first. Because if you understand your financials, then you know the inputs into the Passion for Profit or Profit First course.
Right. Because that's the next thing I would say is to read Profit First. That's the next thing. And also a book that I read along with doing all of these other things was just a small book called The Fred Factor by Mark Sanborn. Have you ever read that book?
The Fred Factor?
The Fred Factor. This is a true story of a mailman who loves his job and genuinely cares for people. You think, okay, a mailman, yes, that's an important thing. We need to get our mail. But he made an ordinary job extraordinary. So the book goes through telling his story and showing how we in our everyday lives can just do little things along the way to make a big difference in someone else's life. That book really helped inspire me to really work with excellence and to put out a product and have a business that is extraordinary. So that book really just gave me energy and inspiration. And it's just a real short read.
All right. So that'll go on my Amazon list. I'll pull that one in and let my personal drone drop it off at the door. So if you love that, I want to tell you about two books that have really impacted my life that are, similar to what I'm hearing you say with The Fred Factor, having not read it. They're both by a gentleman named Bob Goff, Goff.
Yes.
One of them is Love Does.
Mhm.
That's his first book. And the second one is Everybody Always.
Oh,
And
I've heard of that. I
yes,
haven't read that yet. It's on my list.
they're so good. And his is very much the same way. It's like how, and and in this world, couldn't we use it? But his is just, how can I just show love to people? How can I just
Right.
love people with where I am, with what's going on? And that shows up in excellent work. It shows up in kindness. It shows up in working things out and helping people.
Yes.
In just even the way we do what we do. It becomes very natural, but I would highly recommend, if you have not read those two, Love Does and Everybody Always. They
Yes.
will be like sprinkling grace and love and joy on your day when you read it. And some of his stuff, I'm like, that man's courageous. He's got some crazy going on, but in a really good way. So
Yeah. Yeah.
I would love to do more of that. Have a little more Love Does, a little more Everybody Always sprinkled around.
Yes. Yes. Yes.
So Diane, you've told us some of your next profit goals. What are you what are you doing to put yourself in a position to be successful?
Staying on top of my numbers,
Okay.
staying within my percentages, and always looking for ways to be better, ways to buy better, to produce better, just always looking and learning to be better.
Do you have an exit strategy? Have you started talking about that with your daughter yet?
Not a whole lot. I am not one that sits well still. I have to be working with my hands. So I am one of those that probably will be working near her deathbed in some fashion. Scaling back, yes. But I see myself hopefully just working up until I just physically can't work anymore, because I love what I do. I get so much energy in the workroom. So she might have to push me around. I don't know. In one of our rolling
roll
chairs.
You from machine to machine, right? Yeah.
But what I just kind of see is hopefully maybe just a very slow flipping of the roles over time, because I am nowhere close to giving this up.
I love it. Diane, thank you so much for your time today. Everything that you've shared, I think, has been super actionable. It's been exciting. I love hearing, and I'm sure that our listeners do as well, how sometimes maybe we've created a ceiling that doesn't exist, and what if it could be more. And I love that you have just opened up even the idea that for a workroom, it can be more, because I think sometimes we feel stuck, that we're so limited, because it is, when we're fabricating, it is certainly tied to speed. I mean, it just is. It's tied to how much can you push through as one person, how much can you push through with a second person and a third, because it is a time eater. I mean, it just is. It just is. It's very different than putting out an idea and moving on to something else. We hold on to some of these products and fabrication for days or weeks, sometimes based on what it is we're doing. And so, just you sharing with us that it is possible to move the ceiling higher, I just really appreciate that. And I appreciate too that, I didn't know that all the changes came after that 2014 class. I knew that it impacted you, and I knew that you had emailed me about it. But I'm just so thankful that you came and that you went back and did the hard work, because again, going to a conference, going to a seminar, listening to a podcast, those are great and they give us great ideas. But each of us are responsible for going back and actually putting that new knowledge into play and making it experience. Knowledge isn't enough. It has to be actionable, and we have to do something with it to make it an experience. And so I love that you have experienced profitability and can talk about it.
Thank you.
So thanks for being with us today. You're welcome.
Thanks.
Bye.
Bye-bye.
Thanks for joining us today on Profit is a Choice. If you're interested in the financial health or standing of your company, go to my website at scarletthreadconsulting.com and click on the purple bar at the top to access the financial health checkup. It will give you the guidance you need to make your company financials represent the business that you want. And in everything that you do, remember, profit doesn't happen by accident.